I'm alive. I'm alive. That's from Frankenstein. Um, Welcome, everybody. Just going to wait a couple minutes for people to jump on. It was kind of weird today. I scheduled this for 8, but YouTube was kind of glitching out on me, and it wouldn't like put out the message that, hey, I'm live. And so I was sitting here, and it shows me how many people are on, and there's just a big 0. And I was just like, nobody wants to play with me today. But, now some more people are joining on, so I feel happy. So I had to like turn it off and redo it. So that's why we're a little bit late, but I'm happy everybody could join me here now. This is going to be one of several lives that I'm doing through the late fall and early winter. I didn't do last week because I was off in the bush, but I'm going to be doing it through until after Christmas, a ways after Christmas as well. So, yeah, looking really forward. I like to do the lives just because it's a cool way just to actually interact with people. I know I try to answer as many comments and stuff as I can in my on my YouTube channel and stuff like that, but not live. So this is kind of different, and it's also a way I can share some other stuff with everybody that I might not normally go into as much depth on in my YouTube videos. I have a screen over here as well, an iPad um, that I can look at. Hey, Tori,
Yeah.
this iPad here is not showing me the feed. Tori's helping me. She's the brains of this operation. I'm kind of like the prima donna that just like sits here and blabs, and Tori figures everything out. Anyway, so today we are discussing adventuring with kids. It's relevant, of course, to the series that I'm running right now, which is Yukon Trails. And for anybody that's been following along, me, Tori, and the kids were up in the Yukon for 6 weeks this past August and September. And the first thing we did was we jumped off on an 11-day canoe trip down the Teslin and Yukon rivers, which is really cool. This is an area that has a lot of First Nations history, a lot of history from the old Klondike Gold Rush era, 1898 around there. There's historical relics. There's old steam sternwheelers, steam-powered sternwheeler boats, which was pretty much the only main way to travel in the Yukon for a very long time before roads. So it just gets cooler and cooler. We actually find an old sternwheeler that's 130 years old or so, basically left in the bush, and we got to explore that, which was really cool. But you know what? We brought our whole family out there. And for anybody that has tried camping with kids, you know that there's challenges. And you know what? Probably for anybody who's just tried getting out the door to do something relatively easy, especially suiting them up for winter weather just to play in your yard, there can be a lot of challenges. So I wanted to kind of get into some of the things that, oh, thanks, Tori. Tori's behind the scenes here, literally, and just set up so I can see everyone's joining in. I won't. Thanks, hon. Appreciate it. So yeah, so a few of the things I wanted to talk about when it comes to that. Today I don't have as much time. Usually on these lives I go quite some time, and I end up going for like 2 hours or more. Today I'm going to try to shorten it a bit and maybe get to questions a little faster too. We got a lot of people on here. There's Canadian Bushcraft, Caleb. Hey, Caleb. Yeah, greetings from Chicago. Hello. That's awesome. So yeah, I'll just dive right into it. I'm just gonna have Tread Lightly here by Muskoka Brewery. They sponsored this podcast. They also make my Windbound Campfire Pilsner beer as well. But this is a 568 mil can, and it's a 4%, so it's a light beer, but really cool, like branding, shows people like hiking and fishing and stuff like that. And it's just delicious. Anyway, so yeah, I think one of the things that you have to look at when you're going to take children, especially young children like mine, into the outdoors and into the backcountry is, you know what, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be more nervous than when you're going with yourself, right? So you got to make sure that you have the skills and abilities to manage whatever goes on back there, right? Because problems can happen, and when you have little kids around, they can become magnified. So, double down on your bush skills, read up, that kind of thing. Safety is important, right? Good fitting life jackets. First aid kit. I would recommend taking a wilderness first aid course. There's things specifically for children in those courses as well. But one of the things that I notice is that you have to lower your expectations to an extent, right? And you still see me doing stuff like the Stikine and the Teslin River and some remote areas, paddling into Alaska, the Yukon, northern BC. But what these expectations that aren't as big are how much you can actually travel in a certain day. And I remember the first trip we ever did with Wesley when he was very young. It was an early spring trip, and we were planning on paddling along this bay and hopping back 2 portages into this backcountry trout lake. And while we made it to about the first island, like 2 kilometers away from the put-in, and Wesley was having a meltdown, it's like, well, it looks like we're gonna just camp here. And we did. And you know what? It was an amazing time. And it was an awesome time with Wesley. So you have to kind of reduce your expectations in comparison to what you would normally do if it was you and your buddies or you and your partner or whatever, right? But remember, at the same time, it's still going to feel like a big trip because let's be honest, the extra work it takes to go out there with kids, right? So you're not just taking care of yourself, you're taking care of yourself and other dependents. And because of that, and because of the little bit more fear that you feel when these little kids are relying on you, it still feels like a big trip, and you get a lot of really good family time. And, part of the reason that I do it, and I think it's okay to be a little bit selfish in this context too, as much as it's, obviously the kids come first, it's about the kids. But at the end of the day, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first, as they say too, right? And I kind of do that through taking the kids out because let's be honest, getting the kids out into the bush gets you out into the bush more. And honestly, with the amount of time I want to be in the bush, I have to take my family along because, quite frankly, I'm just going to miss them too much. And I don't want to be away from them that much. As much as I love doing the big trips I do, at the end of a 3 week trip, man, I'm really missing my kids. I'm really, really missing home. And that's why I like to do these big adventures with them. I think that's something to consider for sure. And one of the things you're going to want to make sure that you do before you head out is you're going to want to make sure that you have adequate clothing. Okay, in the summer, it's protecting them from the sun and the bugs, right? So those two things, and it's kind of like it can be a bit of a balancing act because it can be a bit of a balancing act for sure because the bugs are, you want to cover your skin when there's bugs, but you also don't want the kids to overheat. But then if their skin's not covered, they can get sunburned and all this kind of stuff. I use Muskol Family and Kids, which has a very low DEET amount, and it's completely non-toxic if it's used as directed. And Hudson, he goes to daycare up here where I am, and of course, pretty much in the bush. So when he's in daycare and he's the only kid that doesn't have bug bites. One kid actually had to miss a day because of black fly bites in black fly season. And the lady running the daycare, took Hudson's Muskol Family and Kids and recommended it to all the parents because he was the only one that wasn't riddled with bites. Obviously, a wide brim hat and rash guard material is a good idea. and kids sunscreen, but try to keep them covered. Rash guard material is sort of like a spandex type material. There's spandex in it. So it's a wick away. It's non-cotton, but it's a lightweight, but it also blocks a lot of your skin. You see a lot of like fly fishermen wearing that kind of stuff when they're fishing for like fish in the flats and very hot areas. So that's definitely the go-to. And then in winter, it's tough to find proper clothing for kids now that we're getting to late fall and winter. But that's another big concern, is making sure that kids are warm out there. And so, you got to really spend a little bit of extra money just for your own peace of mind. So you can buy kids merino wool base layers. They're actually less expensive than adult ones because they're way smaller, right? And again, just like you dress yourself, you want to go in layers. But it's challenging to find good mitts, good boots, and whatnot for kids. If you can find, you want to go a little above and beyond to try to find good boots. But a great tip with what I do is just you bring the hand and foot warmers, and you just basically, when you're out there on a cold day or even a medium cold day, if you just swap those out roughly every 4 hours, the kid's going to be good. His feet are going to be warm, and he's going to be good. And you just don't have to worry about them getting frostbite and that kind of thing. Of course, we bring a canvas tent with a wood stove in it for heat. Now that we have a bigger canvas tent and a bigger stove, it takes more wood to heat the stove. And I was finding that my entire time winter camping, I would spend just sawing the entire time. So I've been bringing a small travel chainsaw. I think it's called a Still 270. Great little bush travel saw, a little extra to haul, but at the end of the day, it makes a difference when I'm traveling with the kids just to make sure they're warm. And, good sleeping bags. Always bring, -30 sleeping bags when you're going to be winter camping, or -40 even. And good ground pads. Inflatable ground pad with some down in it is a good idea. But, you can also double up foam ground pads, use bows. And if you don't have a -30 sleeping bag, or you're worried that's not even warm enough, remember, you can always double up on sleeping bags as well. And this way, no matter what, with all these clothes on, with all the clothes, with the sleeping bag, with the wood stove as backup, and all these kind of things, and the ground pad, you know that unless you completely blow it with, the hand warmers and foot warmers, that these kids are going to be warm out there. And yes, it's a lot of work to dress them and to prepare them and all that kind of stuff, but it's totally worth it. One of the challenges too is keeping them entertained and happy, and that's one of the things me and Tori find to be hard is when you're trying to paddle a long distance. When we did this to Keene, Hudson was probably at the worst age for being like chill while we're paddling for hours. And we dealt with a lot of rain there too. If you see some of the videos, the kids have newt suits, which I believe are made by Mountain Equipment Co-op, and they're adorable. But they're one-piece rain suits with a hood, and those work great. But we also have brought like an inexpensive poncho that we could just throw over that as well to literally double up their rain jacket. So if you're paddling, because I'm talking to a bunch of people right now.
Why?
Because I'm live on my YouTube chat.
And are they gonna get healed?
No, they're not coming here. They're just listening, and I'm going to answer some of their questions. Hudson's just chiming in right now.
Huddy wants to talk about how he loves camping.
Do you want to come in here, Huddy? Come here. Come say hi, buddy.
Okay.
And honestly, it's a lot of work. Hey, bud. Say hi to everybody.
Hi,
Huddy, do you want to talk about camping?
Mama.
Talk about an adventure.
Why do you like camping, Huddy? What do you like about camping? You said yesterday you want to go camping again.
Man of many words, this one. Yeah, we were watching one of our videos together as a family, and he's like, "I want to go camping. I want to go eat fishing, and I want to eat fish, and I want to go canoeing." And honestly, some people do ask like, "Why?" To be honest with you, a lot of my on YouTube, and I might be better off more solo trips if I was just worried about views. I know some people really love the family stuff, and I love making it, but it's more hit and miss for me. And there's been a lot of trips that I've taken the family on, essentially justified being able to do so much with them and spend so much time with them. Partially justified doing it because I could film it for YouTube. But that is, I guess, a bit of a doing, and it's so good day that just giving them that connection to nature at a young age, getting them to see that there's work that needs to be done. They're going to learn how to pitch in. They're going to help. They're going to learn these like real skills from a young age that are going to give them confidence in whatever they move into down the road. I know it was like that for me as well. So who knows, maybe Huddy and Wesley will have their own spin-off YouTube channel and be my biggest competition in 2 minutes. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I think keeping them entertained is a good thing. So keeping them entertained, keeping them safe, right? So when you're looking for a campsite, try to find a campsite that's relatively flat, right? Because a lot of these beautiful campsites that you might camp at without the kids along, there's a big drop off or a cliff right in front of it. And then you're spending your entire time there panicking and trying to tell them, don't go beyond this. You draw a line or put sticks down. Don't go beyond these sticks. And you get really nervous. And the whole time you got to keep an eye on them and you're scared. And it's just a hazard, right? So if you have that option, pick a campsite that is safer. The other thing that we do is we notice they don't really need toys. Hudson doesn't really want to play with toys so much, but he plays with like sticks. And if you have a campsite where there's there's any sand, a beach or a sandbar, and we often bring like a collapsible folding bucket that can fill up with water. Just playing in the sand, building sand castles, building a moat, dumping water in there. He'll just play around in there for a long period of time. It's like having your own sand castle at camp. And then for some reason, Hudson also became obsessed with like filling up Ziploc bags with rocks or sand and wanting us to keep them and put them in the canoe. So I think by the end of our trip in the Yukon, we had about 7 Ziploc bags full of different rocks, and he'd be kind of playing in the muck and in the gravel or in the rocks, and he'd turn and look at me and Tori and he'd say, "Mom, Ziploc bag," and we'd be like, okay. He's like, a lot of Ziploc bags. So we'd bring them over and he'd fill them all up. And then finally at the end of the trip, I'm like, okay, Hudson, you can keep one of these Ziploc bags full of rocks that have been weighting down our canoe for days. And he's like, okay. And he picked one of them. But that was just a great thing that we just kind of leaned into because we saw he had his little project going, and that was a great thing to keep him company. And he didn't need typical toys out there. Really, he was just playing with sticks and rocks and a Ziploc bag and sand and having just as much fun, but really having to use his brain to do all these things, right? So I think that was pretty cool. But one other thing that I have noticed, and the same kind of goes for dogs too, when you start bringing your dogs into the bush, and which is kind of crazy to me, but kids and dogs, right? As soon as you take them camping, you're gonna hear about a lot of stuff. Online comments, probably more of a reality for me, but family, friends, or family members that think what you're doing is unsafe. And obviously there is a point. Some people with absolutely no experience or skills in the bush, if they took their kids into the bush, they would be unsafe themselves, let alone the kids, right? So that's a possibility. But I think also the reality is that we've really gotten so detached from nature and our modern day society that we've kind of lost touch with what's really dangerous and what really isn't, and we get used to things that are inherently way more dangerous in our day-to-day lives, right? So the thing I always think about is driving down a two-lane highway. You know, a lot of people, something like 50,000 Americans, probably more now, die in car accidents every year, right? A fraction of that many, get killed on a camping trip, right? And so people will say, oh, it's not safe to do that with your toddler. Yet jump in a car and drive, 120 kilometers an hour to grandma's house for the day and home, which is a lot more dangerous. If you didn't know how to drive at all and you're going to do that, it would be a lot more dangerous. So, just something to put into perspective. And if you're thinking about getting your family, getting your kids out a little bit more, and you're worried about that, it's going to be your own decision, which which of course, hopefully people respect. But you want to take advice from, child psychologists will tell you, this is where kids learn cause and effect. You have to let them fall so they learn not to, essentially. And early childhood educators, and just a lot of the time the people that have really done the studying and understanding about this. One of the things with my son Wesley, who has severe disabilities, it's reiterated to us again and again by all the professionals, and more specifically, what we've heard, which is actually, this lady came and she was there delivering a wheelchair, and they filmed it for our show Home in the Wild on Nat Geo. And she said on the show, she said, being in nature is good for any child, but it's especially good for Wesley, just because of the added stimulation, the changing in scenery, uh, all the different things that go along with being outdoors, with traveling in a canoe, and just physically him being able to sit up in the canoe. We noticed after we did the Stikine River that he was just sitting up on his own, which was a big step. He wasn't really able to sit up on his own for very long. Now he can sit up on his own for hours, and that's just sitting in the canoe, right? But we also noticed that he started looking around a lot more, right? So he started noticing the scenery as it changed, the waterfalls coming down, the trees, the rocks, and enjoying the scenery more. And in turn, after our Yukon trip, we noticed that he was now engaging with us more, giving more eye contact, and just seemed like he had developed. And some family members and teachers noticed that as well. So I don't want to say if you have a child with disabilities taking camping and it's like some miracle cure. That's, I mean, maybe that's possible for some people, but we do notice more of a difference when we're out there. And, that feels good because it's something I can do, right? Because I can use the skills I have to actually help, because I'm not a scientist or doctor or whatever, but I'm an outdoors guy, right? And maybe if I was just an accountant that didn't know how to camp, I wouldn't be able to spend as, offer him as much, not to knock on accounting, obviously. But yeah, so I mean, that's a big deal. And I have seen Hudson just being above, when it comes to different things, walking in the woods. He wants to saw, he wants to help. So yeah, I would say if you're interested in taking your kids camping, to just do the research, get the right kind of clothes, lower your expectations. Also, another tip is get up early, right? Because anybody with kids knows that it takes way longer to go anywhere, right? And that's the truth, whether you're just going to grandma's or whether you are going to the grocery store or whatever. But when you're going camping, it's like a whole other thing, because there's so many other things you need. And what we do is, if you think you have to get up at 8 o'clock, get up at like 6 o'clock, right? And it'll be a bit harder to get up, but you'll be like, all right, I feel good. And you won't get to the end of the day and feel rushed, feel like you can't find a campsite. You'll have plenty of time to be safe out there. And you'll also really impress your friends and family members when you show up and get to whatever campsite you're going to at the other end of the lake an hour before they do with your family along. So I really recommend that as well. So yeah, lots of benefits. Another one, I remember me and Hudson, we found a dead minnow, and so we went and looked for a crayfish under a rock, and we fed the minnow to the crayfish just down at the river here. And then the next day we came back, and you could see how the crayfish had eaten part of the minnow, which I thought was pretty cool. But you could see how the crayfish had two claws, but one was a tiny little claw. And I was trying to explain to him how it loses a claw, how they can detach a claw, how crayfish can detach a claw and it grows back. Well, that day we go fishing, and we're just bobber fishing with a worm in a river, and we catch a bunch of fish, but then we catch a nice one, and Hudson says, okay, let's eat that one. So I say, okay. Well, sure enough, I clean the fish, and there's a big crayfish claw right in the fish's stomach. And he always wants to see what it ate. So he's helping me clean it, and he's helping me use it. What did it eat? So I cut open the stomach and pops out this big crayfish claw. And I explained to him that underwater, the fish was trying to eat the crayfish, and the crayfish was like this. And the fish came over and bit the crayfish claw and pulled it out, but the crayfish got away. And now the crayfish claw will grow back slowly. And just between that and seeing the crayfish with a smaller claw and dissecting this fish, I mean, what a lesson this guy's had, and all through like real tangible experiences. So I can see for sure that it's beneficial, and it's just a lot of fun to take your kid out there and teach them things. So what's right for me isn't necessarily what's right for everybody. But when it comes to camping with your kids, don't underestimate the amount of work. Reduce the amount that you have to travel every day. Lower those expectations on where you're going to get to. You know what, you can still fish, let's say, but instead of fishing all day with your buddies, you might be able to fish for 3 or 4 hours, but you're still out there doing it. So it is good for yourself. And even though you might not be having the kind of type 2 fun, let's say, on a challenging portage, even though like it is sort of stressful, packing up camp with the kids. Like Tori and I were noticing that, like typically Tori and I, with all our gear and everything, we break camp in 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours if we take our time. With the kids, it's like 5 hours, and like 4 if we like push it. You know what I mean? And so that's something that you just have to plan for, right? So you got to plan all these extra things, and it's a lot of work out there. And so sometimes you're like, it can be a little bit challenging, a little overwhelming when you're out there, right? But nothing in life that is worthwhile doing is ever easy, really. You know what I mean? Nothing, I'll rephrase it. Nothing that's really in life that's fulfilling is worthwhile doing. And, I remember at times when we were on this Teslin River trip in the Yukon, one day we got a lot of rain. It was quite rainy, and it was cold, right? We're getting to camp, we're cold, we're raining. Then we got to do all this work, and it creeps in your mind like, man, I don't know if I'm having fun out here, right? But then I'm watching the video with Tori and the kids, and Hudson's like, I want to go camping and I want to eat fish. And me and Tori kind of look at each other, and I just literally get a tear in my eye because I just want to be out there with them so badly. And it really does like strike a primal chord in you to be out in nature with your family. I heard a pretty famous psychologists say that studying humans in modern day society is like studying a zebra in the zoo. And I think that's true because we've been living in cities and in modern civilization for such a small period of time in the general scope of, of our time on this planet as the human race. And so there are things that sort of ignite that light of the past that are are things that trigger something within us that make us feel fulfilled, that are probably inherently part of our biology or part of our evolution, that just don't happen anymore. And I find being out there with the kids, and honestly, part of it probably has to do with a little bit of fear of being out there. Are they warm? Are they getting cold? Are they going too close to the water? All these kind of things. Are they going to be safe? And then all little problems that you can solve yourself if you have a decent amount of outdoor skills. And then because you're kind of solving all those problems, and you're also at the same time connecting with them, watching them learn, teaching things, and you're getting exercise, which makes anyone feel good, and you're in nature, which makes anyone feel good. All those things kind of just connect me with something pretty special. And so I think that's a big part of it. And just that bonding time they have with their kids is a big part of it. So, I definitely give it a try. I can also understand if people just say, "Oh man, getting out there by myself, packing for a camping trip by myself is hard enough." Um, I can't imagine doing it with a kid. So maybe it's not for everybody, and I think that's okay too. Or you start small, right? So you don't go out there and do an 11-day canoe trip down the Teslin with your kids, right? You go out into the backyard. You go for a walk somewhere a little closer to home, a nature walk, a little closer to home. Maybe then you do where you can do maybe a little more remote of a nature walk. Maybe then you do a trip and somewhere that's a little not so wild, and you put your canoe in the water, or maybe you motorboat camp and you travel across the bay and you camp on the other side of the bay. It doesn't have to be this enormous big things. It can be a baby step, but even once or twice a year is great. It's probably more than a lot of people ever get to do. So Tread Lightly by Muskoka Brewery. Awesome. So, yeah, Muskoka Brewery is makes Jim Baird Adventurers Windbound Campfire Pilsner, and it's all sold out now. But there is some more exciting news to share about that. I won't give all the details away, but that's pretty exciting. I'm also looking at doing a collab with a famous lure manufacturer. You probably have seen them in some of my videos, but getting out there and fishing on these trips that I'm on, and oftentimes relying on fish for food, I've got a pretty dialed in idea of what works in what areas. So I have some hand picked selections from the line of this lure company that already works, but I'm going to design and come up with my own color schemes for lures. So these are going to be spoons and spinners that have just performed well year after year for me. So stay tuned, and I want to put together a little Jim Baird Adventurer backcountry tackle box that someone can buy like the whole set as an online order. So that's another thing coming as well. So yeah, I hope that you want to check that out. And you're gonna see actually on my channel, there's gonna be more of the family content. Not to give away too many spoilers, but after we finish the canoe trip, which has kind of an unfortunate ending, you might have seen in the teaser, we actually spend some time in an off-grid cabin. We drive up the Dempster Highway. We camp near Tombstone Territorial Park, which is spectacular. We visit Dawson. And then we explore these old coal mine roads up in the Alpine tundra in a side-by-side ATV while living out of this log cabin. And it was so cool, like so cool. The wildlife, the fishing. I mean, how do you get into some Arctic char? We do a little bit of grouse hunting as well. Really, really cool. So there's all that coming as well from the Yukon adventure. So I'll have those family videos going for a while. And there's been a lot that I've learned from those trips and from traveling with family. Obviously having a good life jacket for the kids is a great idea. On the Stikine, we actually had wetsuits for the kids that we put on, against their skin, and then we'd layer on the clothing on top of that. And that way we knew even if we did dump because the water's cold, that they would float with their heads above water because we had good life jackets with the head support like this. And that even if they were, downriver circulating a back eddy, knock on wood, for half an hour or something before we could pull them out, that they would have been fine. So that's, something to keep in mind as well, too. So anyways, yeah, I've been, I've been talking for a solid half an hour here about that. I hope everybody likes this topic, and, there's a few take homes from it as well. It's something that I don't think there's a ton of good information out there on specifically is taking the kids camping and all the nuances revolving around that. And this time, because one of the reasons I love doing these live chats is I get to actually interact with people. So I'm going to go to take some questions. If it's about adventures, kids, let me know. But in general, if it's a little off topic, that's okay too. But we want to keep it, about the outdoors and camping and all that kind of stuff too, for sure. So I think Tori, hey Tor, are you going to be able to field some questions? Okay, Tori's got her hands full because she's parenting up there. Well, I'm drinking beer and chatting with everybody down here. Cheers. I like these big tread lightly cans because there's more beer in them. So yeah, so we're gonna jump to some questions here. Let's see what we got. Oh, can you please say hello to 6-year-old Sky? Hi, Sky. How are you today? Hi from Sundridge. Please put together a brook trout lure kit. Sundridge is just a town close to me. So I wanted to put together a brook trout lure kit specifically. Like there's a lot of ways I could go at it. But I think what I want to do is I want to have more of a multi-species kit. So maybe like 2 brook trout lures, a pickerel or walleye lure, and maybe a bigger lake trout pike lure, is something I might want to do, as opposed to just having a brook trout lure kit right off the hop. Although I might do that. We'll see. So that's a good idea. Somebody's saying, I'm wondering why you don't use your drone to scout out downstream rapids. That's a good question. And I think in some cases, using the drone to scout downstream rapids would work. However, it's not really as cut and dry as you would think. First of all, I only have so many batteries in my drone, and they take a lot of power. So if I'm using my drone to just scout rapids, then I'm not using it for all the beauty shots I want to get of being at camp or a waterfall or a canyon. I'm going to just have a bunch of shots of me scouting rapids. And although it would work, it's part of the problem is also the drone. Like let's say I'm on like a rushing narrow creek. It's very hard to take off and land the drone in an area where there's not overhead bushes and trees, right? So if the forest is very close, taking off and landing is an issue, especially if the river's strong. You can't take it off from the canoe very easily. And if you take it off from the canoe and the drone wants to return home, the canoe won't be where you took it off from, which means it'll crash in the water. But for the main reason, though, is why you don't scout downriver rapids is because from an aerial perspective, rapids look way easier. And to properly scout rapids, just a little drone screen doesn't cut it. So let's say you're like, is there a rapid around that corner? You could use a drone to scout around the corner and be like, oh, there is. It looks really super easy. probably safe to go. But if you use the drone and you go around the corner and there's a challenging rapid there that you might be able to run, or that you know you can run but you have to scout, you're still going to have to walk down, and you're still going to have to scout that rapid as best you can, put your own eyes on it from shore all the way around the back, the bottom of it, get a good idea where the rocks are and plot your route down it. So oftentimes it's because it takes a lot of time to pull the drone out of wherever it's stored, unfold it, boot it up, connect it, find a place to take it off, find a place to land it, then potentially have the issue with not having enough batteries. A lot of the time it's just faster to put your boots on the ground and walk down there and check it out. But that's not to say that, there's situations where it wouldn't be good to use your drone to scout rapids too. So I hope that answers the question. Favorite music when camping or road tripping? I don't really know if I have like a favorite kind of music. I don't usually bring music when I'm camping. That's probably why I'm just singing all the time, because we don't have any actual music. But yeah, I don't know. I like a bit of everything, really. I don't think there's any one kind of music that is bad and one kind that is good. So I can't really give you a good answer on that. But I like folk, I like classic rock, I like country music, I like, geez, I don't know, like all kinds of stuff. So all right, how off grid is your home? Well, the home that I live in now, I don't really consider it off grid, because to me means off grid off grid means no electricity. And we have electricity here, but we don't have garbage pickup. We don't have any sewer systems or anything like that. We're on a septic, and it's also like the closest town is a small village, which is 10 minutes away, and I'm back onto hundreds of square miles of public land, and there's a fairly wild whitewater river that I'm on here too. So in that respect, it's out of the beaten path, but it's not the wilderness by any scope of the imagination. Where our cabin is very, very much off grid, which I'm actually going to tomorrow morning, by the way. So I'm going to film some of that. I'm going to go up there. We have no wood up there, so I'm going to cut some wood. I might get a little more hunting in before rifle season ends for deer, and make sure the boat's running, because we haven't been up for a while. It's kind of an older engine, and make sure the battery's good. And then Tori and the kids are going to come up for a few days after that. But yeah, that's completely off grid, no running water, just an outhouse, no road in there. It's a 23-kilometer boat ride just to get there after a 4-hour drive from our house, which our house is a 3.5-hour drive from any urban center as well. So yeah, good answer, thank you, you're welcome. Pancakes for Dinner is a great song. Hello from Utah, 1 hour from Green River. I've heard that is beautiful. Utah is I've just driven through it. Gorgeous state. Tori, my wife, was did Canyonlands National Park. She actually has a video on her YouTube channel. Tori Goes Outside. If you want to check out my wife Tori's channel. Utah, man, cool place. Let's see. Hello from Oakville. Hi. Would you do an international river run? Anything on the bucket list, near or far? Where's always been a cool place, but I think it might be a little politically incorrect to go there now, would be Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. So that would be a super cool place to go visit, the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. It would also be neat to do one of those Utah rivers and Canyonlands as well. It'd be pretty cool. And of course, Alaska, which counts as international too. I mean, that's just like my Yukon stuff, right? I'd be all over going to Alaska. I'm sure there's some other places in the world as well. Some of those I don't know if I'll ever get around to doing it, but some of those old Silk Road countries, man, I don't like, they look pretty cool, like really cool. And they have some pretty remote places and, maybe not necessarily as remote as the Arctic Canada, but they have some places where, people live, uh, they don't have the same standard of living. So you're not around the same kind of modern development and corporate America stuff as you see here. So it feels like you're kind of stepping back a little bit. Yeah, anyway, so I might check something like that out. Oh, here we go. I'm thinking of purchasing a new axe to bring on portaging trips in Algonquin. Do you have one that you'd recommend? Well, I would go with a Hudson Bay axe, hands down. Hudson Bay style axe. Geez, I think maybe Condor makes one. Cold Steel makes a good Hudson Bay style axe. Hold on, I think I have one here. Yeah. So this is a Cold Steel Hudson Bay axe. This one's actually a little different because it has these two locking Allen keys on the back here, which is kind of a little weird at first, but then you realize you could just swap out the head pretty easily if you wanted to. So that's pretty cool. The Hudson Bay axe style, the collar's a little narrower here, and that allows you to choke up on it like this. And you can actually, if it's sharp, you can actually use it for woodworking, whether you want to build a paddle or something. So I really like that about it. But essentially what it is it's a hatchet and axe combined. So you have a lighter head, but a longer handle than a hatchet. And that longer handle allows you to get the head speed that allows you to chop way more efficiently than a hatchet. In fact, a hatchet is like kind of not good, really. Like I wouldn't even bother. I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, but a hatchet isn't, I don't really carry them much anymore. But this is what I carry, a Hudson Bay axe on canoe trips. This one's by Cold Steel. There's some other brands out there. I actually have another one that's made by Chris Johnson at Adventure Forge. I don't know if he's doing it anymore, but you might be able to get him to make you one if you want a real beauty. He actually makes a template for his axe heads out of a old rusted out artifact that was found on the banks of the Abitibi River, which is probably about it's probably about 200 years old. So it's the exact shape of an old Hudson's Bay axe head that was traded at Hudson's Bay trading post across Rupert's Land and beyond. So he might make one for you. Check out Adventure Forge on Instagram, and that might help. I'm thinking of purchasing new. Any more questions, Tori? Tori's helping field some questions for me, so I don't have to read. Let's see. What's your favorite fish to eat? I think speckled trout, or brook trout. Brook trout and speckled trout are the same thing. That's probably my favorite. And I swear that the first one every year is always the best. When I do that spring trout trip, catch that first trout, got that crisp, cool spring evening. You cook that up over fire. Good Lord, that's good. But man, is pickerel or walleye. Sorry for all those that call pickerel walleye or vice versa. But oh, that is so good. And it's good multiple different ways. I often fillet it and pan fry it, milder flavor. But like Atlantic salmon, that's not really a freshwater fish, but that's incredible. What else? Me and Hudson actually caught some landlocked Arctic char. Spoiler alert, but oh my God, that was good. They're all in their spawning colors. But yeah, I think overall I'm gonna go with brook trout is my favorite fish to eat. Okay. What's your favorite Adam Sandler movie? Hi from Delaware. Um, Favorite Adam Sandler movie. Okay, because I just did a little Adam Sandler impression when we were eating sloppy joes. I know the way yous kids like 'em, extra sloppy. That was Billy Madison. Geez, man, tough. Maybe like Waterboy or something like that. But yeah, I grew up listening and watching some of those Adam Sandler movies when I was a little bit younger. So yeah, maybe I'll go with Waterboy. Uh, Hello from Rhode Island. Hi, the Spake in Papua New Guinea of canoes and crocodiles. A Papua New Guinean river. That would be pretty. That would be wild. Uh, I love how he pulls out the exact axe I was talking about. Yeah, it just so happens it was here. Yeah, I love that axe. So I've been using it for years. If you can't tell, it's been pretty beat up, but that's cool. Um, Thanks, Jim. Thanks a bunch, Jim. Great info. You're looking skinny. Are you losing weight? Why, thank you. I don't know. I was just on a hunting trip where I was walking, probably about over 4K a day, a lot of it uphill and first thing in the morning. So I might have shed a few lbs out there. I'm trying to get back to doing more weights, working out. I'm noticing when I just go beast mode, now that I'm getting a little older, I can tend to get injured a little bit, a little more. So Hudson goes all the way to daycare. It's like a 30-minute drive to take Hudson to daycare. I have some workout stuff here, and of course, just chopping wood, which we always have wood to chop around here. That's a workout too. But there's this little, small town gym that I've started going to. So I'm going to try to pump some weights and make sure I can stay in shape to keep doing this adventuring stuff for many years to come and bring you guys all this content. Brook trout and walleye, agreed. Can you go wrong with brook trout and walleye? Um, oh, here's a good question. Cold water canoe camping / fishing portaging. What are you wearing on your feet to stay warm in and out of the canoe? So you might, if you're not doing a trip where you're going to be taking in water, taking water like when you're doing whitewater canoe trips, and the canoe's filling up and you have to kneel. You might want to look at some muck boots. It's an old wives' tale that rubber boots pull you down because they're going to be harder to swim in, no doubt. But the water inside your boot isn't heavier than the water outside of your boot. It might make it harder to once you climb out to walk, but it definitely doesn't help you swim. That's for sure. But muck boots, they're pretty tight around the calf. The other one, which is great, are tinglies or tlingies or whatever they're called. They're basically galoshes, but they're galoshes that come way up. These are also a great thing to wear late winter when you're winter camping and that snow starts to get wet because they're completely waterproof and you can just put your boot liner in them. So multi-purpose. Often what I do is I wear, a wader. So yeah, like that's probably your best bet is to wear wader bottoms, fly fishing wader bottoms, with a good wading boot. And those fly fishing wader bottoms have either a neoprene sock or a Gore-Tex sock, like a dry suit, like wearing your dry suit and just keeping the arms tied up around your waist if you're not really going to be doing any white water or paddling, any sketchy conditions. That's probably the best call, right? It's just wear wader bottoms with a neoprene sock and a fly fishing wading boot. Get your fly fishing wading boots always 2 sizes too big, and that way you can put like 2 warm socks and a neoprene sock on underneath, and your feet won't be too tight because what happens when it gets cold and your feet get tight, your shoe gets tight, is that there's not enough room for the circulation to move through your foot. You can't move your toes, and your feet get cold. The other thing I like more about that than the muck boots is that, muck boots, which are insulated rubber boots, any kind of insulated rubber boots without a removable liner, they're very hard to dry. So if you do get wet, if you're kneeling, you take in water and water runs up your boot, or if you just step in water that's too deep, you're gonna have a very hard time drying those out around the fire. You can wear bags in your garbage bags in your feet, but they do lose their R value. The trick to drying out those boots is to use hot rocks, so hot that you can't really pick them up with your hand, but not too hot so that they won't burn the inside of your boot. You pick them up using something else, just a glove, and you jam them right into the toe of your boot, and you fill them up, and you'll see the steam pour out. But nobody wants to be doing that. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. I go with a good wading boot shoe with a good sole, and chest waders is probably the best. And of course, you can just wear neoprene socks and water shoes too. But when the weather starts to get cold and the days are cold, that's not very comfortable, because when you're out of the water, your feet just get cold. But that's doable too. What's the nighttime routine with the kids before bedtime? Do they sleep all through the night? Uh, are you guys able to keep the canoe balanced? That's a good question. Yeah, the nighttime routine with the kids when we're camping is oftentimes, they're pretty tuckered out. There was one time on the first day of our trip on the Teslin River, Hudson wanted to stay up and he just fell asleep by the fire. And it was just so beautiful. The stars were out and there was just the sound of the river going by and the crackling fire. And we just brought out a blanket for him and put him around him, and he stayed there for a little bit. But yeah, typically we'll take them to bed before us, probably later than than it should be for kids that age. And we'll say when they're getting tired, you want to go to bed, and usually, yeah, they want to go to bed. You can tell Wesley's getting tired. He's usually pretty easy to get down, and we'll go into the tent with Hudson. On this last trip, he really liked it when we were singing him songs. I don't think we brought any storybooks. Maybe we brought a couple storybooks, but a couple songs. And then one of the things I do for Hudson is I have a run-on story about a kid named Ludson. That's really Hudson, but it's not Hudson, it's Ludson, and his dog named South. And they do all these big adventures, and Ludson has special powers because he can do things that only grown-ups can do, even though he's just a little kid, and he knows how to work really, really hard. And so he wants me to tell him a story about Ludson and sing him a song. He falls asleep, then me and Tori hang out by the fire a little bit longer, and then we turn in. And then the kids were actually sleeping in a little longer than me and Tori, so we'd get up, sneak out of the tent, break camp, get breakfast going, and get a head start on the kids before they got up. And that way we could both work together doing things. Otherwise, one person has to be doing things and the other person has to be managing the kid. And so that's one of the reasons why it takes so long to break camp, is because kind of one person essentially has to do it, while you trade off doing the parenting, which is fun too, because you're playing games with them and stuff like that. As far as balancing the canoe goes with kids, typically when you have camping gear in a canoe, it does weight it down. So you have a lot of ballast. So it's not as tippy. And when the kids are smaller, of them throwing their weight from side to side, it's not so detrimental because they're not as heavy. And as they get older, they start to understand what you're saying. Be careful, don't tip the boat. And by that time they understand. But that being said, there are some times where Hudson falls asleep on the side of the boat and he's dragging his hand in the water, or he's awake and he's just content dragging his hand in the water, and we don't want to tell him to move because he's content. So Tori and I'll just sit completely on the other side when he's doing that. And so, yeah, we haven't really had much of an issue with the kids making the boat feel tippy, but definitely there's some times where there might be a few very very poignant recommendations for Hudson to move his weight more towards the center. I hope that helps. I use neoprene booties when I fly fish in the mountain streams of the Rockies in central Canada, central Alberta. Yeah, I find a lot of the answers for canoeing, footwear in water have already been solved by fly fishermen. That would be a good way to put it. There's people that are walking around in water. They have boots that are lightweight, that drain. They have waders, and boots that protect your feet from getting wedged in between boulders. I think for me, it's if you want to look for the best footwear for canoeing, look at what fly fishermen wear. Is there a canoe paddle shape style you'd recommend that does deep water as well as shallow rivers? A canoe paddle that does deep water as well as shallow rivers. I mean, yeah, so sometimes when you're shallow, you're going to be paddling in shallow waters. You want more of a short, more squared paddle that's wider, as opposed to like an otter tail, which is more long and skinny. Because you push more water. So if you're going to be a lot of, like, for example, when Tori and I did the Bonaventure, we were like basically standing and poling because there's so many rocks and so many shallow rapids. If you try to paddle, you only get this much of your paddle in the water and you can't steer. A traditional blade style would be probably more along the lines of, a beaver tail, although that's still pretty long. So what I'm using is a Warner Journey. That's pretty good. I like that blade style. And what I often do is I'll bring, even though I like an otter tail as a better paddle blade shape for flat water than wider things, over the long haul, I just like the feel. An otter tail isn't very good in whitewater. So what I'll do is I'll bring a whitewater paddle and which is longer as well, and a flat water paddle which is shorter. But I'll bring a flat water paddle that could also double as a whitewater paddle should I lose my whitewater paddle in a rapid. And those kind of blade types are usually ones that will do better in shallower water too. So yeah, you just basically, I guess the answer is you just buy a paddle that is doable for shallower water, and it'll still work fine in deeper water and white water. Just not as nice as a feel in the deeper water as a longer, narrower blade. Hope that helps. Any suggestions for Ontario Crown Land canoe trips with a young family, like to get away from people but have a 6 and 9-year-old? I mean, there's a lot of parks in the Temagami region, but there also is a lot of Crown land in the Temagami region, and that's also an area where there's a good amount of information on the canoe routes. Now, are you going to necessarily get away from people? Probably. Maybe you don't want to, start right at the Lake Temagami access point for some of those. But that might be a good place to check out. I don't know where you live or how far away you are from anything, but yeah, you can try that as well. There's all kinds of different options across the Temagami region that are either Crown land or not Crown land. But yeah, it's kind of hard. See, the thing is, when it comes to Crown land, it's harder to get info on it. So it's the sort of thing where there's a lot of local knowledge involved. And so the Crown land areas that aren't your typical canoe route areas are areas that have taken me a couple years to figure out, right? Like I drive in on a bush road, I bushwhack into a back lake on a compass bearing, and I find a canoe, a boat stashed there, and I realize that boat connects to a portage trail that connects to an ATV trail. So the next time I come in, I park at the ATV trail, portage in on the ATV trail, jump on the portage trail, right? And then I paddle it, and I realize, oh, there's a portage trail into the next lake. And when I get, you know what I mean? And then so it takes, oh, well, we can get to this lake on this portage trail, which you realize is also part of, looks like snowmobiles have been on it. And you sort of piece this information together. So yeah, I think, I think it might take a little bit of recon to get more dialed in on the Crown land stuff that's not like a typical canoeing area, known for canoeing area. But at the same time, you look at someone like Kevin Callan, Kevin Callan's Lost Canoe Routes, let's say, some of those books deal with a lot of Crown land routes. Some of them, the other one is Cottage Country Canoe Routes, like Kevin Callan. I would dive into some of those books, and that's probably where, because when you're going with kids, you probably, and you really want to do a real trip and not just an exploratory trip where it might not really work out, but you learn something for the next year. You might want to go with a little bit more information. So yeah, I would check out some of those Kevin Callan books, Lost Canoe Route. You could probably get into some places where you're not going to see a lot of people. ACK Scratchers, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. I love all of your adventures. I would love to see you and Greg do an adventure together sometime. Maybe you're talking about Greg Ovens, Ovens Rocky Mountain Bushcraft. Greg is another participant on the show alone who's got a really cool YouTube channel. Hi from New Zealand. Our kids love watching Wesley and Huddy. Can you say hi to Marliese 7 and Moston 5? Hi, Marliese and Moston. I'm so glad you guys like watching the videos with Huddy and Wesley. I'm sure they would love playing with you. New Zealand, that's another place I should go and paddle a river sometime. Let's see. Does North get to sleep in the tent with you all? When we have the 3-person tent, there's really not enough room. We started traveling with this larger tent, if you see in the Yukon. I'm not too sure yet how strong of a wind it could stand up to, but we were mostly camping in the bush. North can sleep in the tent with us if he wants to, but he prefers to sleep outside or in the vestibule. I think he just feels like claustrophobic in there. Or whatever. But if the bugs are bad, we'll let him in. Usually the bugs go away at night, so he's kind of allowed to do what he wants to do. But he likes to sleep outside. He finds like a perfect little ergonomic place to curl up under the roots of a tree or under the branches of a tree and just, I don't know. He just looks like a wild animal out there. Hello, Jim and Tori. Big fan of your channel. What's your favorite seasoning for fish? Have you tried JO seasoning from my home state of Maryland? I haven't tried JO seasoning, but we've definitely tried Old Bay, which is something from your area as well. I'd love to try JO seasoning. I think I'm thinking that probably Old Bay is my favorite. We also like Fish Crisp Cajun, which isn't so much of a seasoning, but more of a coating that you then pan fried in. So it's a seasoning and a coating as well. But big fan of Old Bay. And if you saw on the Arctic trip, my brother and I forget the brand. I should figure out what the brand is. but it's just a salmon seasoning. That's sort of like a fancier salmon seasoning. They were kind of rubbing into the fish. That is really good too. So yeah, big fan of Old Bay salmon seasoning and fish crisp. Awesome stuff. Have you thought about building a greenhouse? I have, but we haven't gotten around to it. But I think that would definitely extend the growing season. It'd be a fun little project to share. So maybe that's something we'll look at in the future. Um, you have to canoe through Scotland, Atlantic salmon. Oh man, how cool would that be? Fly fishing for Atlantic salmon in Scotland. Just beautiful. Mountains there in the Scottish Highlands. I've never been. My name James Baird is a very Scottish sounding name though, and I don't know, back many generations ago, my family was from there, so I'm sure I would be right into it. Are you thinking about writing a book? I really think you should. Um, I should. I was thinking about writing a book, but you know what? There's a lot of time needs to be taken to write a book, and it's a pretty tough hustle as a Canadian author. So I don't know. I do it just for fun, but I don't know if I would be like losing money to write a book because that would mean less YouTube videos I could make. However, I don't know if everybody knows this, but before I started YouTube, and actually, for a long time, I'm not doing as much anymore because I'm focused more on my own channels. But I did contribute and still do contribute to an extent to Field and Stream magazine. Before Canoe and Kayak left, I contributed to Canoe and Kayak with written stuff and also with short videos and Field and Stream and in Men's Journal videos, written pieces. I've written features for Explore magazine, which is a Canadian national publication, and shorter stories. And I wrote a feature for Outdoor Canada and many other shorter skills stories, as well as a handful of others. Lake Superior magazine, Real Fishing, which was Bob Azumi's magazine. I used to write features for them too. So yeah, I've written a lot of articles, and also for my website, theadventurer.com. There's some articles there that aren't published anywhere else. And I'm actually in the process of taking all my collective written work and putting it in one ebook format, like a magazine, but much longer, and selling it for $4.99 a download, so people can sort of have a curated version of all of my written work, all of my feature articles covering Arctic expeditions, 33-day expeditions across northern Quebec and Labrador, snowmobile expeditions in the far north, and all kinds of survival tips and trips, camping hacks, all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be called Jim Baird Adventurer, the complete written works. Not really a book, but about the closest thing to for short term. So you will get some reading material from me if you're interested. Old Bay is awesome. Oh, you have lots of rivers in New Zealand. Cool. Uh, do you know who Justin Barber is? And have you heard about the massive canoe trip he finished recently, crossing Quebec and Newfoundland, north to south? Yes, I absolutely do. And I tried to connect with him. It would have been pretty cool to sit down with him on my podcast. But yeah, what a hardcore trip he did. I actually was supposed to meet up with him at Canoecopia, which is a canoeing trade show, before the pandemic hit. Chatted with him on the phone, but they ended up canceling it, and he got sent home, and I never came down. So he's definitely a contact of mine, but yeah, really, really amazing and impressive trip he did. I don't know if I'll ever get around to doing something that long and impressive, but maybe, you never know. Hey Jim, I love all the footage of the Yukon. Do you never see the northern lights up there? I don't think I've seen it in your videos. Thanks. Yeah, so in the Yukon, when I go, you have almost 24 hours of sunlight. So you don't see the northern lights because it never gets dark. However, yeah, I've seen the northern lights in the Yukon when we were up there. We went into a remote hot springs one time and crazy northern light show. I didn't film that, but when I was there ice fishing last March, some of you will notice that I put out another version of an ice fishing video in the Yukon where we just caught the giant lake trout under the northern lights. I call it lights out trout. Oftentimes videos where you're shooting in the north and you're ice fishing in March and you put them up, they don't run to like April. Everybody's over winter and ice fishing. So what you'll see is a lot of these ice fishing guys, they'll start running some of their ice fishing content now because it gets a lot more views and it makes it, people are more interested and more relevant to their followers. So I ended up actually, I shot a couple of videos back in March. I ran them and then I re-edited them and basically just put those two episodes together and put another video up at this time of year, hoping that it might get a little bit more traction, which, kind of did. But definitely some northern lights on that trip. On our last trip to the Yukon, because we were there in August and September, Tori and I saw some pretty awesome northern lights displays too. So yeah, the answer is yes, I do. But in the summer, you can't see them because it's not dark. Hollow 123, thank you very much. Let's see. Good evening from Maine. Good evening. Will you come to Alaska? Absolutely. Actually, Tori and I and the kids paddled the Stikine to Wrangell, Alaska, about, not this past September, but the year before that. We have a series called Into Alaska. And that was unbelievable. I've done the Stikine and we had amazing weather. 1 out of 10 times, well, probably 1 out of 15 times would you ever get that little rain in the northern coastal rainforest. Then when Tori and I did it with the kids, it hammered tons of rain the whole time. It's like only 1 out of 10 times would you ever get that much rain, right? So we got unlucky the opposite way. But once we got into Alaska and into Wrangell, the weather was good, and we spent some time there. Of course, camped in Alaska. So I have been there. Last time I was there as well, I sailed up the Inside Passage from Wrangell up to Skagway, and we got off in a few places, including Sitka. We kind of got a bit of an experience for Southeast Alaska just on the ferry. But that's about it. So I think I need to do a little more Alaskaing, So the answer is yes, I'll come to Alaska. Hard yes. Do you have plans of going outside of North America? No plans of going outside of North America now, but I will hopefully when I mentioned Kamchatka, which is in Siberia, hopefully when things change with the whole, whatever, when things are a little more normal, I can consider going to Russia. How was your deer season? Jumped on live late. Not sure if you talked about it. I didn't get a deer, so I don't, I don't feel like I'm not the best deer hunter. But we had a really good hunt. We camped out of a canvas tent, not really far from my house. Hunted for 7 days, and we were out there for almost 8. And very long walk to get to where we were hunting. The first few days, swirling winds. Deer don't want to travel when there's swirling winds. Heavy rain as well, which we still hunted right through it, which was more just getting damp, kind of miserable. But things didn't really pick up till the end. We don't want to do too much scouting right during season, but we weren't seeing the kind of sign we wanted to see, that we'd seen in that area before. So I did find a really good spot, grunting in a buck, hearing rubs, getting onto scrapes, bleeding, getting, like lots of cool things. So by the end we were on them and just couldn't connect. but really felt like it was it was a real hunt. It was a real exciting hunt. And it's not just all about, as much as I really want to fill the freezer, if that's all I wanted to do, I would probably go to like farm country and just bait them or something like that. But legally before the season, all that. But I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty exhausted getting up at 4:30 a.m. the last couple of days, 5 a.m. Um, and pretty cool. The last day we kept walking by a scrape on a striped maple that was maybe 100 meters from camp. And when we got there, that scrape was maybe only a day old. But we'd all walk past it, and I'm thinking, well, our scent's here. Is it even going to come back? Well, the last day we were walking, 900 meters up hills, like exhausting distance. And sure enough, on the way back, we realized that a buck had hit that scrape 100 meters from camp. And that's sort of the last thing we saw. So you never know. So anyways, maybe I'll get one up at my camp that I'm going to tomorrow. There's still a few days left in rifle. What's up, Jim? You ever connect with Lost Legs or think of doing a group trip with him and Xander? Yeah, I would. He lives a ways away from me, but maybe I'll reach out to John. Um, Any time to go ice fishing at your new cabin in the north. Loving the family trips in the Yukon, and love the trip with Ted. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're definitely going to go ice fishing up there. I can't wait. We It's a very long way to get out to the cabin in the winter, so I have the one skidoo. We're getting another skidoo. Hopefully I'll be working with my buddy Ryan in the Yukon that owns Yukon Expedition Sleds, and bring what might be, I don't know, well, he does ship them to Ontario, but you don't see many of these amazing snowmobile toboggans in Ontario. So I might get one of those, because we're going to have a lot of firewood to haul into there, people to haul into there, and everything like that. And it's a bit of a tricky route, because there's a narrows we need to go through where there's current. So you have to bypass that and go through other lakes even to get to our cabin. So even if there wasn't a lot of snow on the lake, you couldn't drive a vehicle there, because like a car or truck there, because of this narrows. So yeah, you're gonna see a bit of an expedition, hopefully not too exploratory, getting in there in the winter. Maybe we build a hockey rink, we travel into fish our lake, fish some backcountry lakes with the kids, and just have a blast. So you're probably going to see us up there multiple times in the winter, and hopefully February, March for a couple of weeks. So I can't wait. Come paddle the Albany River all the way to James Bay. I want to paddle the, I should do that, Brendan. Yeah, I should do that. But you know what I'm thinking is the Winnisk. So I might, I don't know, maybe I'll do the Winnisk this June. And, well, I do the Albany too. I don't know. I gotta make it up to James Bay though. I think that's the bottom line. What's your view on taking an electric bear fence on your canoe trip? Uh, you know what? If it's if you're in somewhere like the Labrador coast where there's a lot of bears on the land, there's not as much sea ice and icebergs anymore, so a lot of them are on the land now. Probably a good idea. The other one you might want to check out, which I have used before when I was up on Baffin Island, and when I was in on the sea ice, and when I was also in Ungava, is called Ice Bear Alarm. So it's actually lighter than an electric bear fence, and essentially what it is a bunch of stakes that go into the snow, and they all have 12 gauge shotgun blanks on tripwires. So if something walks into the perimeter of your tent, boom, maybe one goes off, maybe two goes off, and scares the bejesus out of the bear. And loud noises tend to scare animals. It won't hurt them like an electric fence, although I've also seen instances where bears just bulldoze over the electric fence and attack the people inside, and the electric fence didn't seem to do much. I'd be scared that if I went up to take a pee pee in the night on the electric fence, that it wouldn't be too we'd have to edit around that scene for the YouTube video. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I would if electric fence is too much, check out Ice Bear Alarm. It's a good other option. Hard yes for Alaska. Right on. Hope you like that. Come north to explore the interior. Yes, around Fairbanks. There's even the Baird Mountains in Alaska. I gotta check that out. Um, I think your niche is cinematography. Tried to get another series with TV media to to do documentaries about history combined with your adventures. It would be epic, like you did with National Geographic. You know what? That would be cool. I kind of over TV though. Like it's just like if they wanted to come along and do it my way, and I'd say this is what I'm doing, I'll help you figure out the logistics. But at the end of the day, producers are going to be producers, lawyers are going to be lawyers, doctors are going to be doctors, and they're not always going to act the way we want them to act. And to get them to really do what I'm doing, it would honestly take like an overhaul of the industry, and which isn't going to happen because there's so much, bureaucracy and things with unions and overtime. It's like trying to fit, a round peg into a square hole, or if you say it the other way around. So we did do that, the thing with Nat Geo, which was cool. I got out a lot of, uh, you know, uh, I put a good word there, got spread awareness about Fox G1 syndrome, and hopefully inspired some other people to get outdoors with their kids. But I'd rather just do my own thing, to be honest with you, right now than do another TV thing. But I'd always be open to it, and it does sound pretty cool. So thanks for bringing that up. Uh, Hello, hi from North Carolina. We love it when you sing while making coffee. Please say hi to Ann. Hi, Ann. How are you today? Thanks. You're welcome. Glad you like the singing. Uh, any interest, or have you had another opportunity to compete on a loan? I haven't. I haven't had another opportunity. The more time that goes by, the more I'm like, what's the point, kind of. But at the same time, if they called me, I'd say yes. It's just that, I don't know if I'd miss my kids more or I'd try extra hard because of my kids. Because when I went on it the first time, I didn't have kids. And that's part of the reason why I tried harder, because I wanted to win and I wanted to start a family. So I'm not sure how that would go. I'm sure I would miss them a lot, but maybe they'd give me extra strength to try. I don't think it would be the kind of thing that I would do that I'd want to try to win again. So it wouldn't be the decision that I'd take lightly, because it really doesn't matter what you do for the most part out there. Winning is going to be tough, or staying out there a long time is going to be tough. And it's going to be like, what if you come in second place and you don't get any money, and you've like drained your body, and I'm weak and I can't go back to doing my regular videos afterwards. So it would be a risk, but I think the answer, it would be yes, that I would do it. I had a hard go for deer too, just south of French River. We got 1 out of 3 tags. Well, at least you had one. Seems like we had a similar hunt. Yeah, so where I am, I'm about 30 kilometers south of the French River, of the upper French River, closer to Nipissing. So it sounds like we probably had the same challenges with weather. It didn't, you're out there for a week and you get what you get, but if you're only hunting with 3 people, you can't really do a push. So when it's that weather and the deer aren't moving, you need to kind of push the bedding areas and have people posted at different areas, or you push them through a pinch point, through a funnel, and have people ready to ambush them essentially. But if you don't have enough people, you can't really push, and so you're just sitting there in the rain and in the wind, and nothing's moving around. It can be tough when the conditions aren't on your side like that. But the last couple days were pretty awesome. Hey Jim, Tori, and the boys, greetings. Neighbors from Berks Falls, we love all your videos. Hi, Colleen Crawford. Thank you very much. Hopefully, I bump into you in town one day. Wesley goes to school there, actually. Yes, good question. Someone asked if you and your brother or Tori would do another alone show. I just answered that one. I think the answer is yes. I don't think Tori would, though. She might. Hey Jim, good to see your live stream. Just stopping to support. Loving the content lately. Thanks a lot. Great music on your adventures. Thank you. Uh, what's been your favorite adventure so far? Oh man, well the Hood River this year was unbelievable. It was like so cool. But probably this is when I was actually on assignment for Field and Stream magazine. It was like the third big adventure I did for them that year. But then they basically like canned the whole adventurer program because it's just costing too much money. And they never actually ran any of the videos I shot on this trip just because I think they're out of budget and whatever. So I actually ended up editing those myself after about a year went by and selling them to Canoe and Kayak magazine. And then recently, I added them all. I did a sit down interview right here, told the story of the trip, and used that to, bridge all the footage together, and came out with something called in the thumbnail. It's just called The Labrador. It's not nearly as well shot as my current trips, like, and of course, camera equipment, charging equipment wasn't as good because this was 2011 or 2012 that we did it, so a little while back. But that was probably my favorite trip. It was a 33-day trip, not counting travel to get to the beginning and travel to get to the end, which is amazing because we sailed up the whole Labrador coast. But we paddled we took the train up to Shepherdsville, so now we're off the main road system. And we started at Iron Arm of Atikomegan, got into the DePaul River, crossed the height of land to get into the DePaul River, took the DePaul River down, but before the confluence of the George, because that would have been too far down, as we needed to go up the George, we crossed over a height of land between the DePaul and the George River, bushwhacking on compass bearings through remote wilderness lakes, and it included one portage that took a full 2 days to complete. And then we took an unnamed river once we got over the height of land to the George. Then we went up the George for about 12K, then up in elevation through all the George River's headwater lakes, which included upriver travel between those headwater lakes and portaging, all the way back up to the Labrador border, where at this point we were so high there was no trees. And of course, the Labrador border is a height of land that divides the waters from the North Atlantic's Labrador Sea on the Labrador side and Ungava Bay on the Quebec side. And we crossed that height of land to the extreme headwaters of the Adlatock River, which we took all the way to the North Atlantic. That was unbelievable. There's another canyon portage that took us 2 days to skirt this canyon. Oh, actually three, 2 and a bit, but this portage, just compass bearing, lead, just amazing. We had to survive off of the land for about a third of our calories out there. So it was late in the season as well, which was cold, but that meant that we could harvest some Canada geese for sustenance. So we were hunting geese. We got about 4 geese out there. We're eating fish. We're picking bake apples, tons of blueberries, other berries, and just yeah, like our dinners were, we had a little wild rice and whatever else we could get. And then we had this one stretch where the weather got really cold and the fish's metabolism just shut down, went down to about -5 Celsius, and the fish metabolism shut down. Nothing was biting for about 5 days. We were just starving because we were exerting so much physical energy out there. And then, of course, the weather turned. It was feast or famine. We loaded in, caught a bunch of giant fish, got geese. And then by the end, when we were paddling on the Arctic Ocean or on the Labrador Sea, we were in no trees. We were watching whales. Didn't see any polar bears, but we very close to seeing them. And finished in Hopedale. So that's probably the hardest trip I've ever done, the hardest canoe trip I've ever done, but probably my favorite as well. I just want to thank you for inspiring me to involve my family in the outdoors. Your content is amazing. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that's you know what? That's an added bonus for me. If I can get other people, because I love when I get inspired by somebody else and it gets me out there, and it works both ways because when somebody says, "Hey, you inspired me to get outdoors," well, that inspires me as well, and it's very encouraging to me to just kind of keep doing this and hey, you know what? I'm helping them be inspired. I love it when people inspire me. And what I'm doing is actually helping people as well, which feels good too. So you're very welcome. The sea shanties are great. Thank you very much. Do you ice fish on local lakes around your area? A little bit, like not a ton, but yeah, I've been out on yeah, what lakes? I don't know, Amic, Whitestone, few others that I won't mention the names of openly, but yeah, no, I guess not a ton of ice fishing really close to home, but probably get out a few times a year for sure, and hopefully more this winter too if we get a good winter. I did also yeah, down in Halliburton I've had some luck doing some trout ice fishing too, so caught some nice ones down there. Um, any plans? Hubby and the boys didn't get any deer this year, uh, um, either. Very wet at times. Yeah, you get what you get on deer season. One of the reasons deer hunting, honestly, the reason I do it is because you get so much food, and even though it's super challenging, the times that and it can be very boring, and it can be a mind game. The times that when things come together, it's like among the most amazing hunts that you can have. But the thing is, if I'm going to leave for a week to hunt, if I'm like hunting ducks or turkeys and I get a few ducks or a turkey, like Tori's not going to be as happy. But if I come back and I have a freezer full of healthy, good meat for the family that we can eat, you know, throughout the winter, it usually doesn't last that long. But then that's like, get out there and hunt, honey. So, you know, it's kind of devastating when I don't get anything. Do you ever see wolf packs in your travels? And what does North do if he hears them or sees the wildlife? Do you keep him close to you? I don't. Well, I don't really. I've never seen. Well, actually, that's a lie. I have seen a wolf pack when Ted and I were in the Arctic, and yeah, wolves. Don't really like dogs. So I have heard stories of wolves killing dogs before. I did have one dog that was like a herding dog chase after a wolf when we were winter camping, and we whistled and she came back and everything was fine. So I don't really think that like if I have heard wolves howling, a pack of wolves howling. Usually the dogs don't, my dogs don't run off. I remember my old dog Buck heard the wolves howling and he knew what it was. He just chilled, stayed put. North does the same thing. So, if I had a dog that didn't have good judgment about something like that, and just ran off when he heard, you would have to keep him close. But yeah, like if I heard wolves howling from close by, I would probably make sure I'd probably keep an eye on North and be like, make sure he's not gonna run off and do something stupid. But that being said, just even seeing a wolf is extremely rare, right? Like you don't there, even when there are wolves out there, to see one is very unlikely because they generally stay clear of humans. People relate them to phantoms often because they're all often just their howls are heard, the eerie cry, if anything, or their tracks are seen and they're never seen. So, in general, wolves don't cause humans any issues and don't attack humans. Um, there have been some very rare occurrences. Mostly it's been when the wolves have been in captivity. So it's not really, I don't, it's not something I'm concerned of, with my dogs, at least anyways. But if there were dogs that were just like tied up and left sort of in a remote area or, If there's trapping, if they got caught in a trap and were howling, the wolves could get them. So there's certain things that you have to keep in mind. You don't just want to roll out there willy nilly. But in general, it's not something that I ever really worry about. Other than the two occasions I've told you with my dog chasing a wolf into the bush, that's about the only time I've ever really worried. So yeah, one time have I ever really worried about it. No, I didn't have a dog with me when Ted and I were followed by a pack of wolves, which is another amazing canoe trip we did up on Victoria Island. This is before our YouTube days, but we were followed by a pack of 5 Arctic wolves, and we're in a canoe. And they're following us on shore pretty far away, but then we got to a really shallow section of river where it was about that deep, and our canoe got hung up. We had to get out and start pulling, and at this point, you don't have the comfort of the river. They could just kind of jump in and swim up to you. So they started getting closer and closer, and I wasn't really too concerned, but Ted was kind of looking over his shoulder like, there's wolves following us, man. So we fired a bear banger at them, the pen launcher banger, and they all just like took off full speed, terrified. Huddy is your twin, including the kids. Thank you very much. Would you ever consider an Arctic dog sledding trip in the Arctic, kind of like Will Steger? Yeah, that would be wicked, actually. The only thing is, you have to have kind of your whole dog sled team. So, for example, Sky High Wilderness Ranch, where we stayed in the Yukon, they're one of the only places that offers multi-day dog sled tours, and where you actually get to run your own team. So they have such a big kennel that they'll have up to 10 people. And for 4 or 5 days, they'll train you everything you need to know about running dogs, how to harness them up, how to care for them, how to feed them. You'll learn all the dogs' names. And then you'll do a 5-day backcountry wilderness dog sledding adventure in the Yukon with your own dog sled team. So that would be, I don't do guided trips typically, but because the logistics of getting a dog team, training them, getting them to the north or wherever, and doing a trip is pretty hefty. It's really like a lifestyle change. So that would be something where it'd be pretty cool to go with an outfitter like Sky High Wilderness Ranch. Check them out if you're interested in doing anything like that. It's pretty special what they offer because nobody else is offering that. I did several other trips with another Jim Baird, and he was always fun to trip with. Do you know any other Jim Bairds? I do not, but I guess pretty nice. Have you ever had any good Squatch encounters? No Squatch encounters yet. Um, do you ever fish down the hill? That's just at my house. Yeah, all the time. Ever experienced anything paranormal in the wild, UFOs, ghosts, etc.? So just recently, me and Tori, we took my brother Ted and our friend and in-law Ron on ATV. So I have this 6-seater ATV. We went up this trail. We went skeet shooting. We rode up some rugged stuff into a backcountry lake. And on the way back, me and Tori saw a bald eagle turn into a raven right in front of our eyes. So this bald eagle flew down, landed on the road in front of us, and right when it landed on the road, its head turned black, and we realized it was a raven. And only me and Tori saw it. And Tori's like, "Whoa!" I'm like, "You saw that? Like, what the hell?" Like, it was such a trip, and which is, like, I'm sure this is right in an area near Bon Echo Park where there's all the drawings on Mazenal Rock of the trickster, right? This is right in that area, Algonquian folklore, the trickster. This would be a very powerful thing that happened to us for Algonquians that still have those beliefs, especially back in the day. And so we I think that what might have been happening is that it was a large raven that was carrying a piece of plastic, like a round piece of plastic, in its beak, but holding it in an awkward way so that it blocked its head, and that it landed because it wanted to drop this thing or something, and it dropped as soon as it landed so quickly that we didn't see it drop, and it just looked like it transformed from a bald eagle into a raven. So that's like probably the coolest thing that I just recently saw in recent history. That's like a, paranormal type thing. So you can unpack that if you want. Hey Jim, glad to see you and Ted made it back. Cheers. Interesting to know about the wolves. I didn't know that. Historical relics you and Huddy look for. Wasn't that cute when he kept saying historical relics? Any interest in doing paddle instruction classes? You know what? I might do it one day, but I'm just so slammed with the back-to-back adventures I'm always doing, and then all the production side of things and the videos and everything that I can't imagine being able to do a paddling lesson instructions, but it's always something I'd be interested to do because I like interacting with people. I did one, I don't think they're doing it, but for a while there's a thing called the Maine Canoe Symposium, and I did some workshops there, which was a lot of fun. So it might be something I'll definitely let everybody know if I ever do that. Tori, for the women out there, Tori runs Paddle Like a Girl, and Paddle Like a Girl offers workshops, introductory level paddling and camping workshops right here on our property on the Magnetic River. They're geared towards women, and it's just a super supportive environment. And there's Paddle Like a Girl alumni spin-off trips. They're doing one in the Yukon. They do them in Temagami. So check out Paddle Like a Girl _ on Instagram and paddlelikeagirl.com if anyone's interested in learning backcountry skills. Let's see. Do you sell your maple syrup to the public? No, we don't really make enough to sell it, but it's so good. It would be cool to try, but we don't have the output. We make a year's supply of it, and we have a good amount left, but we usually drink it all ourselves. Any family overlanding trips on the horizon? We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, we might get up to something like that next year. There's some places I'd like to explore actually. So we're considering doing it this winter, going down to Utah. We want to get express van and get it upfitted for 4-wheel drive and lifted so it could handle like even our driveway. You can't make it up our driveway in the winter unless you have 4-wheel drive, but that would give us the space. We could even have beds back there. We could have a lift to get Wesley's wheelchair in, but it would still have the off-road capabilities and the pulling capacity to pull our boat and stuff like that. And it might be a good overlanding vehicle. So no plans as of yet, but I'm sure it'll happen again. Bald eagle, raven, shapeshifter. Yeah. Scott McLeod, Jim, love these live videos. Thanks for, I'm just looking at, I got an iPad here, so I'm looking at all the questions coming in if you're wondering why I'm looking over here. Love these live videos. Thanks for jumping on and sharing stories, tips, and insights on your trips. I've got a package of deer and moose meat for you and the fam. I'll hit you up on IG. Oh, awesome, Scott. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we've had game meat, but like Hudson never even ate anything but game. But now we're like completely out. We didn't get one last year. We got a deer. I split with my brother-in-law, and like we haven't had anything. So except for the odd partridge and duck or whatever. But yeah, Hudson's just like, we're trying to tell him beef is moose, and he doesn't want to eat the beef because he knows it's not. Anyways, Remy Davis, psychedelics in the backcountry. No comment. Jim, I like the wilderness. Been out 25 years fishing, camping, a subscriber to you. Always look forward to your videos. And Ted, thank you very much. Morgan Cameron, I live in Utah. Where are you going? Well, we don't know yet. Oh, thanks, Tori. Tori's brought me a detour. This is another beer by Muskoka Brewery. This is a session IPA, I believe. It doesn't say it, but I believe it's a session IPA. So it's essentially an IPA that has like a full body taste, but it's not like a super high alcohol percentage. Yeah, 4.3%. So it tastes like a full body beer, but it's not like a 6%. Because I don't want these freaking live streams to get too sloppy. Cheers. Okay, let's see. I take it the sucker fish are not good for eating. I've never tried eating the sucker fish. They're prolific. If you can find a run, you can get a ton of them. I hear they're not bad in the spring, but that they're incredibly bony. So what some people do is pickle them, and that makes the bones soft. And you can just eat them. But other than that, at other times you hear they're like not very good. You and Tori should do a partners paddling workshop. Help couples or families learn to paddle together. That's a cool idea. Have you ever considered running a whitewater course? I have, but again, the thing is, if you're going to do a whitewater course, you need a lot of insurance, which means that you can't just do one course. You need to do many, which means that I'd be a whitewater course instructor and not doing my own adventures, right? So I'd like to do it, but I need to I want to stay more focused on doing my trips. And if I was going to do that, I wouldn't have time to do the trips, I think, although I would really enjoy doing it. So I get asked that a lot, and I think the answer is maybe one day I will, but not in the foreseeable future. Can you get sloppy? No, I'll need more than 2 beers for that. Tori, looks great in your recent video. She lost a lot of weight. Oh, she'll be happy to hear that. Backcountry by yourself. Have you ever had anything creepy happen that you couldn't explain? Any being followed you out of an area, or hearing screams, seeing tracks, twisted trees, elk carcasses in the trees? No elk carcasses in the trees, but one time I was in the Yukon, and I saw a very remote area off the Hess River, and I saw prints at the mouth of this creek, and it was a black sand creek. So anybody that knows, black sand is an indicator of gold. But the footprints didn't have any treads on them. They're smooth. They almost look like moccasins. And there's no canoe marks on that beach. So usually when you're paddling a river, if there's someone ahead of you, or if you see footprints, you'll see it's just a very small little place to pull over. And there's no canoe marks. And I'm like, this is puzzling. This person walked down this creek from the interior and then left and went back into the bush, right? Which is strange. Then later on that day, I pulled over, or it might have been the next day. I pulled over and I went fishing at this beautiful emerald colored tributary. And before I got in the boat, I just heard this big, enormous crash sound. Now we're talking about a completely still day, not a hint of wind, and just almost like a huge tree fell over, which was weird because there wasn't exactly any huge trees around here. I thought that was weird, and I got a weird feeling. So I jumped in my canoe and went along my way, and that would ruin the entire horror movie. That's what all these people should do with the horror movies, but they're like, let's stick around and go look at what the noise is. Anyways, later on, an older guy told me that there's lots of stories, legend type stories, if you will, of old gold hermits living in the woods. And in fact, there's an old moss top cabin he knows of just up that creek where I heard the crash. And they're watch your back type stories and don't pan the creeks. So the question is, was this an old gold hermit who was trying to scare me away because didn't want to find that he was squatting in the wilderness, or didn't want to find that, didn't want me figuring out where he thought the gold was and stuff like that. So no weird black magic though. Most black sand beaches on Lake Superior are actually from chain mining byproduct. Oh, too bad. I know you're super busy, but it would be cool to see more gold prospecting, or maybe an episode. Yeah, I read a book about gold prospecting, and but the thing is, in Ontario we don't have placer gold, so there's no gold in the creeks here, and it has to do with just the hills and the Canadian Shield are so old. There's no lodes, so when you hear the saying finding the mother lode, or that's the mother lode, it doesn't mean like a big load, like a load of whatever, something in a truck. What it means is a load as in a gold vein. So often what happens is when you're panning for gold, you don't really expect to find any real money panning. What you're trying to do is you're trying to track your way to finding a larger deposit of gold, and usually a load. So what happens is, like, let's say there's a gold vein, and gold's been forced up from the earth and filled a crack in the rock, and it's hardened over time. Say a creek will run through that area, and then it'll expose the load, and then erosion and wind will kind of break chunks off that will fall down into the creek, and the creek will carry them. You're essentially trying to find old creek bottoms where there might be more gold before the creek changed directions, and see if you could track your way up to finding that load. There isn't always a load, like in the Klondike gold field. No serious lodes were ever found. Maybe they'd all just eroded away. But here in Ontario and in most of the Canadian Shield, although we do have gold, Canada's first gold mine is in El Dorado on Highway 62 north of Belleville. But there, and then of course Timmins. But these are never places where you could actually pan for gold. It's all, I don't know if it's called alluvial gold, but it's in the host rock. So this is like big money. You need to crush it. You need to extract the gold from the host rock. It's a big money kind of business thing. It's not something where somebody could just go out there and prospect with a pen and a pick and a shovel and a sluice box. So unfortunately, I live in the wrong part of the country to get more into gold prospecting. And I did some in the Yukon, but what I found was it was really exciting to find some gold. But what I found was that, like, it took me like 18 hours, and my back was just broken, and I'm just like not even having fun at all. And my float plane was like, thousands of dollars, and I found like a $300 nugget of gold. You know what I mean? I'd rather just be fishing, although it was a really cool experience. So I don't want to poo poo it, but yeah, it would, if I lived in the Yukon, it would be something that I would be more into, or BC, or somewhere out west. Um, it's iron ore. Cool. Okay. Jim, please tell me about ticks. How are they? How do you keep them off? When are they the worst versus when they're not around? Thanks for in advance. There are no ticks really around where I am. I found the first one on my dog the other day. He might have got it down south, but yeah, there's very few. They're starting to move into my area here, so I hear. But in the north, there are no ticks. The only time I ever got a tick on me and it hadn't fed was when I was in Maine. So, Muskol has a tick formula, which is, again, I think mostly just DEET, but it's more specified for ticks. You can use that, put it around your ankles. You can use the tick medicine for your dogs and stuff like that. But fortunately, for the most part, I saw a tick not too long ago on my dog, and that's the only one I'd seen for maybe 5 years, right? So I'm not really an authority on that. Fortunately, I'm just where I live and whatnot is too far north for there to be too many ticks. I did some canoeing in Ontario this summer with my dad and uncle. Audie Lake near the town of Perth made me think of your paddling trips. Nice. And I would kill to live up there, and especially off grid. So many rad legends from up there. You ever been to the Headless Valley in the Yukon territories? They have amazing legends. The Headless Valley is actually in the Yukon Mackenzie Divide. It's on the Northwest Territory side on the Nahanni River. And yes, I've been there. Actually, we camped in the Headless Valley. There's an amazing book called Dangerous River by R.M. Patterson that talks about some adventures in the Nahanni, living off the river, trapping there in the 1930s. We actually visited R.M. Patterson's cabin and whittled a little paddle and signed our names on it and hung it in the cabin, and I believe that was in Headless Valley. But yeah, someone was found headless there, and nobody really knows why. It's kind of a huge trip. Hey, hello from St. Joseph's Island, Ontario. Love the videos. St. Joseph's Island, you guys got a lot of deer there. Maybe I should ask you if I should go hunting on your property. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Isn't DEET bad for your skin? I don't think there's any real evidence to show that it's bad for your skin. I think where it would be really bad is if you drink it or get it into your eyes. They used to offer 100% DEET here in Canada. Now the most you can get is 30%. And part of the reason is because people were thinking that, oh, that you drink this bug spray and it keeps the bugs away. And they're like letting their children drink it and stuff like that, and putting excessive amounts on their babies, right? But in general, if you're like just not an idiot, you're not going to have any problems using DEET. It's been around since World War II. But don't coat yourself with it 24/7, 365. I've seen ticks up north. I've seen moose covered with them. Yeah, are those the same kind of ticks? I don't know. I mean, there's moose in Maine and New Hampshire and stuff, and there's definitely ticks when I was in Maine. So, I'm sure there are, but I'm just saying I don't see a ton of my dogs. I never get them on me. So, yeah. When I lived in Alaska, I used Avon skin, so soft for mosquitoes. Not sure about black flies. Have you ever tried that? I've heard somebody talk about Avon skin before as a good mosquito repellent. I've never tried it before, but Avon skin, that'll be interesting to check out. We love watching you and your family on your adventure. Cheers. Do you guys have heartworm up there? Yeah, our dogs all take they typically all take heartworm pills when they're young, and like a couple heartworm pills a year. So yeah, heartworm's a thing. Lots of people were found headless there. Is that in Headless Valley? It wasn't just a one person. I forget the guy's name. Interesting. Yeah. Is cowboy coffee better than the French press? I would say no, cowboy coffee's not better than the French press, but you don't need to bring a French press, and it's kind of easier in a lot of ways. But I think the French press is better just because you don't need to. McLeod, was that the guy who was found headless in Headless Valley? McLeod? I didn't know that there was anybody else found headless there, but that's wild. Anyways, yeah, just because you don't get the grinds in, and also the French press has a little insulation on it, so by the time your coffee sits and is ready, the coffee's still hot compared to just like in a Nalgene bottle. It might not be as hot anymore. You're fishing barbless now all the time. No, but like in the Yukon, in the conservation area waters, you have to. In Nunavut, it's just recommended to fish barbless, but we did because the fishing was so good, and we felt like unless we were just catching like one fish and eating it, that it just was really bad to just fish with barbs and injure fish and release them. that are potentially going to die or get injured. So yeah, definitely barbless is the way to go. But I'm not only fishing barbless. Yeah, not all the time. I'll tell you one thing though, when you're fishing barbless and you have to, when you get one and you want to turn on the GoPro, that's where you lose them, right? So you're fishing, the barbless got it, and then you have to like keep that tension on, turn on the GoPro, reel like this, and you almost lose it. So having to work the GoPro when they're barbless is another added skill. And I find when I fish barbless, I lose a lot of fish just when I'm trying to turn on my camera. The Grouch stainless steel stovetop coffee maker. Oh, that sounds good. There's the book called The Legends of the Nahani by Hammerson Peters. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that how many people were found headless in that valley. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's creepy. Would you like to do stealth camping with Steve Wallace? Yeah, sure, why not? Sounds kind of cool. Sounds kind of like a bit of a rush, like it's something illegal, right? Uh, can you trap your own bait in most areas you go? Unfortunately, not anymore. Some places they don't allow, like the Yukon doesn't allow any live bait. In Ontario, they do, but you can't transport live bait that you buy to a different fisheries management zone, and you can only trap live bait yourself in the fisheries management zone you live in. So at one time in Ontario, we could bring, which, we never really did a whole ton, but we'd bring like a folding minnow trap, trap some minnows, and then fish with them. But you can't do that anymore unless you're right in your area. Then you have to be able to prove that with your ID and your driver's license. And a lot of that has to do with protecting the spread of invasive species, which is a real problem in Ontario. It's kind of under control now, but at one time people were just catching fish here, throwing them then there without any concern about any knowledge about the detrimental issues that would be to the existing fishery. A lot of native brook trout waters got decimated. Then people are dumping their bait pails here. You don't want to just kill all your minnows. You feel bad, so you dump them, and maybe you're catching rock bass minnows. That's one of the reasons why it's also illegal to fish with a rock bass minnow. Now, technically, it's not called a rock bass minnow because minnows are their own species. It's a rock bass fry. Well, if you catch one of those and then you put it to the next lake, rock bass are kind of aggressive fish that can now get established in another lake, eat all the eggs of something like a brook trout, completely ruin what is a magical fishery. So there's all kinds of bad things about it that people don't like. Crazy what happened to Joe Robinette. Are you friends with him by chance? So glad he's okay. Yeah, that was really scary. I'm friends with Joe. I reached out to him a couple times. I've done a couple shorter trips with him and hung out with him. He was actually on my podcast. If you want to check out my podcast with Joe, that happened right before his accident. I know his hand is still has issues, but it seems like he's on the mend. So good for him. It just shows how resilient the guy is. Hi, Jim. Just wondering if you got the Bluetti power system set up at your cabin yet. I actually haven't been up since I got that thing, which is crazy, but I'm actually leaving tomorrow because I'm going to bring it up tomorrow. So I'm going to go get it set up. I'm going to get the boat, make sure the boat's working. It's been sitting up there. I got to bring it back and winterize it, but it's been sitting out in the cold, so hopefully water in the lower end froze and the battery's working, and want to make sure it's running. Want to get out there, cut some wood, do a little deer hunting, and then Tori and the kids will come up I'll get that Blue Eddy power system set up then, which reminds me I should probably get going. Any Bigfoot sightings? No Bigfoot sightings. I should probably get going, everybody. I said I jumped on at 8:15, and I said I'd try to do an hour tonight, but now it's 10:21 because I've been having so much fun chatting with everybody. So yeah, I gotta get up early and hit the road and drive to Algoma tomorrow. So cheers, everyone. And it was really good interacting with everybody. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for my Arctic video, which is coming out. We had some crazy rain and cold, borderline hypothermic on this day. So no more spoilers other than we finally get to Wilberforce Falls on the Hood River. So that's dropping tomorrow evening. Check it out. And yeah, thanks again, everyone. We'll see ya.